Welcome back to the Kaspa Silver YouTube channel. In today's video, I want to talk about something that Kaspa solves that most Bitcoiners don't want to talk about. And to start, I want to read a post that I made on X. So I said ETF rumors are exciting, but they are not for proof of stake coins or coins that have high fee issues. The higher the fees, the less easy it is for newcomers to adopt and self-custody, which means more custodians holding the crypto. In proof of stake, more coins equal more control. ETFs seem to all want to use one custodian to hold their proof of stake coins. Very bad for security in the long run. Looking at the long term, CAS is setting itself up to lead the next decade of innovation, bringing back the currency part of crypto to life. And to make my case a little bit more clear, let's first start with looking at the Bitcoin white paper. We all know Bitcoin is soon to be getting a ETF listing, and it is very exciting because it will bring a lot more credibility to crypto and just a lot more adoption. But once Bitcoin does get approved for this ETF, it truly has left its original intent, and this was to become a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. I don't understand why people don't really point this out, that the market for a peer-to-peer electronic cash system has still not been realized. It still hasn't been achieved, and Bitcoin ultimately has failed to do this. It hasn't been able to scale, it's too slow, and its fees are very high. Now, by no means am I saying that Bitcoin is a bad investment or anything like that, because it's shifted its narrative. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But truly, if we're looking at the forms and stuff of what Satoshi used to write, you could see what was the original idea of Bitcoin. And he says here, it might make sense just to get some in case it catches on. If enough people think the same way, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once it gets bootstrapped, there are so many applications. If you could effortlessly pay a few cents to a website as easily as dropping coins in a vending machine. But the problem today is that it's not a few cents. And today, currently, transaction fees are skyrocketing again on Bitcoin, and they're currently about $31 per transaction. So this is really due to the ordinals and inscriptions that have come on to Bitcoin, and really it's just showing that Bitcoin is not meant for a lot of things happening on it other than holding it. Because if you start to use it too much, fees get too high. And in my opinion, this is going to hurt adoption greatly. And I want to show you why. After I made this post, someone in the Kaspa Discord talked about what I'm basically describing in my post here. So he says, the guy has a point. Network fees are crazy because of ordinals now. And he's saying that because this developer of Bitcoin was mentioning that he believes ordinals is a type of bug or problem with Bitcoin, and they should probably look to hard fork Bitcoin. The thing is, hard forking Bitcoin is not just a flip of a switch or something that can just be done overnight. It's probably not going to happen, and it will create another fork and a brand new coin, I feel, in my opinion, which could lead to other things in the future when it comes to ETFs. The user then says, will these inscription spam lead to demise of Bitcoin? Probably not, but I'm cautious to save in BTC now. And Ice Cream Fish says, it's not for transactions, but rather to hold like gold. And he says, agree, but just cannot afford to save in it now. And he's showing how he's trying to send his Bitcoin to self-custody it, and it costs too much money, basically, to send it to your wallet. And in my opinion, this hurts adoption, because for newcomers to come onto Bitcoin, especially in the environment that we're in financially, where not everyone just has hundreds of dollars to be able to invest or anything like that. It used to be advertised that you can invest in Bitcoin with just as $1, but you can't even send that Bitcoin and own it yourself without paying a fee of about $36. The other day I had about $25 in Bitcoin. I wanted to send it to a wallet, and it cost $10 just to send $25. And this hurts adoption so much and forces Bitcoin to be held by custodians. And this we're now seeing with BlackRock wanting to launch an ETF for Bitcoin means that they need to buy Bitcoin and hold it somewhere. Well, BlackRock has chosen Coinbase, and Coinbase has also been chosen by a lot of other applicants for ETFs. So that means all the Bitcoin will end up concentrated with one custodian, which is Coinbase, which that means that most of the Bitcoin is going to end up being held by custodians, which could be controlled by governments and liable to listen to them at whatever they request. And so since the whole point of Bitcoin was that anywhere across the world, you're supposed to be able to transact and use it, now to use Bitcoin, you're going to have to go first through a third party again. And the whole point of the white paper was a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash will allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. But because of Bitcoin's fees and basically making Bitcoin more for the rich and not for the everyday person, this means the everyday person will more likely leave their crypto on an exchange, which therefore means that that exchange is the financial institution or the third party that is controlling whether or not you can move your funds around. And this is what I think will hurt Bitcoin in the very long term when it comes to adoption. And this also means that there's a gap wide open for a crypto to really do the currency part that has, in my opinion, left the whole entire crypto space. And this was the whole purpose of crypto, was to fulfill this type of currency that was purely a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And we don't have that. Clearly, the narratives behind Bitcoin has changed. And it used to be digital cash, but now it's digital gold. And I want to read you this real quick because narratives are super important when it comes to crypto projects. That's what gives them a lot of value. And I want to read this for you guys real quick here. It says, narratives dictate how we perceive Bitcoin, and when they shift, our behavior changes, which then in turn changes the whole game, the way the entire industry operates, the business, the consumers, the legislation, the enforcement, everything. Perfect evidence of this phenomenon can be found when we take a closer look at Bitcoin's switch from digital cash to digital gold. From 2013 to early 2017, the vast majority of Bitcoiners viewed and wanted to use Bitcoin primarily as a means of exchange and secondarily as a speculative asset, despite the fact that Bitcoin was just as scarce then as it is now. Rarely did anyone hodl it with conviction or think of it as a savings technology or a superior store of value in any meaningful way. Bitcoiners were obsessed with being able to buy cups of coffee with it. And the majority of the discourse at the time revolved around how cheap the transactions were and how to convince as many merchants to accept Bitcoin as payment. Then sometime around late 2017, early 2018, when the legendary bull rally came and the transaction fees skyrocketed, what could be since brewing under the surface finally burst onto the scene. First, gradually, then suddenly, and without any changes to the protocol, Bitcoin became digital gold. It didn't really become digital gold overnight. The digital gold narrative was, as a matter of fact, gaining traction even as far back as 2015. But for all it matters, it wasn't until the digital cash proselytes migrated to Bitcoin Cash in mid-2017 that it truly became mainstream. The point is, today's Bitcoin is in no way, shape, or form a currency, simply because nobody looks at it in those terms any longer, despite everything being the same on the protocol layer. Nobody in their right mind would want to spend Bitcoin as currency today. And why is that? It's because the narrative inalterably transmuted Bitcoin from lead to gold. Bitcoin went from being one type of asset to another, from a digital currency or a medium of exchange to a commodity money and a store of value. And this process, which can hardly be interpreted as anything other than narrative alchemy, resulted in actual transmutation of the asset and not just in some superficial shift in community sentiment. So clearly the narratives have shifted. And a lot of times what Bitcoiners like to say is, well, there's the Lightning Network. But the Lightning Network still brings in the same kind of issues. The fact that the Lightning Network is custodial. And number two, the Lightning Network would still need to go through the base layer. It needs to go through the base layer a lot less. But ultimately, you're still using the base layer, which means you're still going to experience high fees. They say that the Lightning Network will solve the fee issue, but really it just brings in more issues for Bitcoin. And not only that, recently the wallet of Satoshi, which was like the most popular app for the Lightning Network, has recently been taken down in the United States on app stores. And this is because it's custodial and it could have problems with the government since they're not reporting everything that they're holding. So ultimately, the Lightning Network doesn't really solve what Bitcoiners tend to usually say. So what else is there? Well, some say Bitcoin Cash. But again, if you're looking at Bitcoin Cash, it's just a hard fork of Bitcoin. And number two, clearly it lost in the race of the fork wars. Bitcoin Cash just never got the adoption that was necessary to really bring value to it. And no one is really wanting to use it. And it's very evident by just looking at the facts that, number one, an ETF is for Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Cash. Number two, Coinbase wants to be the biggest custodian for all these ETF providers. And Coinbase has ended support for things like Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic, Ripple, and XLM. And not only that, people may also say, well, there's BSV. Well, Coinbase is going to completely end support for BSV this next year. So ultimately, the other Bitcoin forks are clearly just not winning in the adoption race or the race to gain some kind of value long term. And they've always underperformed Bitcoin. They're always a lot less secure than Bitcoin because most miners are going to mine the real thing, Bitcoin, and not these other forks of Bitcoin. So really, there's still room for someone to fulfill the original vision that Bitcoin had. And this is where I believe Kaspa comes in. And what you're looking at right now is Kaspa's Block DAG Explorer. If we look back at Bitcoin over here, you could see that its blocks are in a straight line and each block happens every 10 minutes. But with Kaspa, blocks are not in a straight line. They're more in a parallel and they actually happen every single second. And this is why it's called a block DAG instead of a blockchain. This innovation allows Kaspa to remain proof of work, but scale, increasing its transactions per second and keeping fees extremely low. It also doesn't stop there. Kaspa, instead of increasing its block space like all the other forks did, it's increasing its block production. And soon Kaspa will be increasing from 1 block per second to 10 blocks per second. And you could see how fast 10 blocks per second is here. And this is currently able to achieve up to 3,000 transactions per second. With these kind of metrics, we're already competing with the other proof of stake coins that are like in the top 10. So already, when it comes to speed, Kaspa already has gotten that down. But the ultimate thing about Kaspa is that it solves the blockchain trilemma. When it comes to decentralization, Kaspa is completely fair launch. There's no company behind it, no foundation behind it. There's no central authority calling all the shots for Kaspa. It's purely a truly decentralized proof of work crypto where if anyone wants to commit a change, if you commit this change, you need to have consensus, just like Bitcoin. It also solves the security concerns because it uses a Nakamoto-like consensus, but innovates it so that it can allow it to scale so that then it can solve the scalability issues. Typically in cryptocurrencies, it was always believed that you can have two of these, but not all three. If you had decentralization and scalability, you probably had to sacrifice your security. And you could see when you're comparing it with other coins here, like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, they all sacrifice the scalability aspect of it to have good security and decentralization. But with Kaspa, it fully is utilizing all three of the blockchain trilemma. It solves all three of them, and you don't have to worry about if this is true or not. The evidence is there for it. And if you want to read more into about how it does this, I highly encourage you reading an article written by Nicholas, which was an ex-Binance crypto researcher. And he wrote the article titled How to Solve the Blockchain Trilemma, a Block DAG and Nakamoto Consensus Friendship. And if you get all the way to the very bottom, after he explains everything, he really sums everything up perfectly by just simply saying Block DAG theory as a generalization of Nakamoto consensus therefore achieves high scalability. Even more so, scalability is achieved while increasing the security of original Nakamoto consensus and maintaining its decentralization. Thus, we can say the blockchain trilemma is solved. Not only that, Kaspa has truly been showing a lot of growth in the hash rate. And this is a really good metric to see where the miners are going to, because the higher this goes, the more secured Kaspa becomes, and it's always hitting new all-time highs pretty much every single week in terms of security. Plus, if you're going to look for what coins to mine in the proof of work world when it comes to ASIC mining, Kaspa is leading the top charts, with all of the miners being the most profitable to mine. And not only that, if you're looking at emissions, Kaspa is the number 2 best proof of work coin when it comes to emissions, meaning how much it emits daily in dollar amounts. Right here in the past 24 hours, it's emitting about $1.41 million in compared to Bitcoin's $40 million. But this makes Kaspa number 2, which pretty much makes Kaspa the second best proof of work to exist in the proof of work scene, in my opinion. But it's currently, in my opinion, still undervalued when you're looking at other proof of works. I recently just described how Ethereum Classic and Bitcoin Cash are cryptocurrencies that have gotten delisted or lost support on different exchanges, mainly Coinbase being, and this just shows that these kind of coins have lost their chance at really getting the adoption to stay relevant in the longer term. But Kaspa is bringing true innovation in the space to remain relevant and actually set the tone for the future of how cryptocurrency is believed to work. Many people thought that proof of work was impossible to be scaled, but Kaspa is proving this to not be true, and in fact is proving that it's even more scalable than proof of stake. So really, I believe that Kaspa is bringing the currency back to crypto, and truly Kaspa is revolutionizing the space with its technology. And I just highly encourage, if you have not started researching it more, you should research it more, because there is a ton of things to learn about it. And one of my favorite things is the fact, if you're looking at the founder, who is Jonathan Samplaninski, he is mentioned in the Ethereum white paper because Kaspa is the result of over 10 years worth of research and work on different protocols in the crypto world. So I believe Bitcoin is going to fulfill its purpose as a digital gold, and Kaspa may be able to fulfill its purpose as a type of digital silver. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you have not considered getting a Tangent wallet yet, please consider doing so to protect your crypto and keep them offline from exchanges. Please never keep your crypto on exchanges. When you keep them on there, they don't belong to you. It's very important to learn about self-custody and hold your crypto. So if you're interested in getting a Tangent, there's a link down below. And if you use the code Kaspa Silver, you get 10% off of it. And I also do get a commission if you do use my code. So I really thank you so much if you do use that. Please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here, and as always, don't be average, be different.